In this episode of Watching the Watchers, we're talking about Attorney General Merrick Garland got called back in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee today and was asked about the school memorandum that he proffered from the Department of Justice that was basically allowing the FBI to insert itself into some of the local school conversations. We're seeing this around all America currently, and so there's a big conversation taking place about what's going on in our schools. The NSBA, the National School Board Association, they sent a letter over to the White House, over to the DOJ, and then a new policy came out, and then they kind of retracted that letter. And so there's a big back and forth going on here. But Merrick Garland is standing by the memo, standing by the letter, got scolded at length today in Congress, and so we're going to review all of that testimony. A lot of slam dunking. Some of it is, worthwhile. Other is just political bloviation, but we'll go through it all. And then in our second segment, very interesting case, we're talking about a guy by the name of David Duvall, a white guy who is somebody who is $10 million richer, won a big lawsuit in a reverse discrimination case, sued a healthcare company called Novant Health over the claim that he was fired unnecessarily, and they replaced him with two women, somebody named Kate Everett and somebody named Vicky Free. They were promoted over him in this 2018 diversity hire movement, and he took it to court, and a jury came back and said, yeah, what they did there was absolutely reverse discrimination. And so we'll take a look at that. Interesting lawsuit. And I want to go through the claims, and you can sort of see how this all unfolded and exactly what the jury wrote on the jury verdict. It's pretty interesting. And then in our final segment, we had a big update on the Alec Baldwin shooting. Of course, this took place on the scene of Rust. And today there was a press conference from both the sheriff, Santa Fe County Sheriff Adan Mendoza, along with the New Mexico prosecutor, Mary Carmack Outwees. We talked about her yesterday, learned a lot about her. They came out, they had about a 20-minute press conference, took some questions, but we learned a little bit more about what happened in the Alec Baldwin case. And so we'll get to that at the end of the show today, our final segment. If you want to be a part of the program, of course, we are recording live now over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's a form here that you can use if you're over there where you are able to ask a question, and we'll go ahead and do our very best to get through them. Somebody says that I switched channels on Rumble, Rob. Did I switch channels? What happened? Did I screw that up? I might have picked the wrong channel. Oh, I don't know what somebody says. Here, somebody's asking for the Rumbles link. So before we jump into the segment, let me just copy and paste that puppy over there. And then we can jump into it. Okay, so you can certainly ask questions by going to this form over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you are looking for clips of the show, they're available over on YouTube at Robert Gruller ESQ Clips. We've got the Clips channel that is where we have all of the clips that you can send to your friends and family. Very, very useful stuff. Okay, so let's get into the news of the day. Attorney General Merrick Garland, somebody who is essentially the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, the head attorney for the entire country, was called back in front of Congress today. You may recall that previously he was called in front of the House. The House of Representatives asked him a number of questions, and we covered a lot of that here. And now today he was in front of the Senate because the senators also wanted to get their pound of flesh out of him. But what is this all about? What is everybody so upset about? We've been seeing a lot of conversations taking place about the schools. We've talked a lot about this idea that maybe the FBI and the Department of Justice were labeling parents as domestic terrorists and people who were worthy of being investigated by the FBI. Where did this all come from? Where did this story originate? Well, let's start at the very top. It starts back on September 29th with the National School Board Association. They sent a letter to the White House, and this is what it looked like. And there's a back and forth that's taking place here, and we're going to go through this because they ended up actually retracting this letter. It's 6 pages long. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to give you a high-level overview so you can see how this all originated in the first place. What we can see here, on September 29th of 2029, they send a letter over to Joe Biden. This is the National School Boards Association, okay? So sort of like the biggest association of public schools in the entire nation, sort of this organization that brings them all together. And so if they're going to write a letter to the president, everybody's ears are going to perk up, wondering, oh, well, maybe we should listen to what they have to say. And so they said, Dear Mr. President, America's public schools and its education leaders are under an immediate threat. What? Wow, you see that first sentence? An immediate threat, public schools and education leaders? Whoa, that means everybody better spring into action. Seriously. They're saying we are respectfully now asking federal law enforcement and other assistants to deal with the growing number of threats of violence and acts of intimidation occurring across the nation. Local school board members want to hear from their communities on important social issues, and we must protect free speech. However, there must be safeguards in place to protect public schools and the leaders. We believe an immediate assistance is required to protect our students, protect our school board, protect our members, all of this. There are attacks coming out against school board members. They are facing physical threats, talking about false inclusions, about critical race theories, and so on and so forth. You see what's happening here? So this is the NSBA. We're under attack. We're under assault. We're under constant threat because the parents are angry at us, because they're teaching our kids and certain things. This was signed off here by Viola M. Garcia. She's the president of this organization, along with Chip Slavin, who's a lawyer. He's the interim director. And they say that we're committed to working with you, President Biden, and your administration to address this crisis. It's affecting our public schools right now. We need your prompt attention to this matter. Vital that we continue this. And we urge the federal government to intervene against individuals and hate groups who are targeting our schools and our educators. Wow. Okay. So this is like a code red, right? This is like red alert. Everybody in America cares about children. Anytime there's something wrong that might impact the children, everybody starts jumping out of their seats, right? Got to save the children. The innocent children. So if the entire National School Board Association, who governs all of the public schools, or the association of which many of the public school entities are a part of this, right? Think of this like the American Medical Association, or for attorneys, it's the American Bar Association, kind of covers the entire country. Same thing happening here. So if they come out and they urge the president, the White House of this country, and they say things like, we are under immediate threat. We ask federal law enforcement and other assistants to deal with the threats of violence. It's quote right here. They want federal law enforcement to come in. Please, White House, we need the feds in our schools. Okay, holy moly. This may have been a way bigger problem than anybody anticipated. So, my goodness, thank goodness we have Merrick Garland, our very fearless attorney general, who's going to spring into action. Remember, this letter came out from September 29th. Just a couple days later, interesting, on September 29th, October 4th, we can count those days, whatever it turns out to, not many of them. And you'll notice that the Office of the Attorney General sprung into action. Less than a week later, we have a new memo. We have a new policy that just is walking out from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They were able to get an entire memorandum drafted and change a whole policy based on one letter in like a week. Right. Sure. Okay. So maybe there's some collusion happening here. Maybe the White House is involved with crafting this narrative and it's just bingo, bango. One comes out and then the next guy comes out with the DOJ responds. Oh, the school boards are freaked out. There you go. DOJ springs into action. When have they been able to accomplish anything so fast ever? Well, anyways, here is what the memo said. This is what the senators are very upset about today, and rightfully so. So Attorney General Garland, you can see he signed off on this. We covered this previously, but it's worth reviewing again. October 4th says, in recent months, there's been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, staff who participate in the vital work of running our school. Spirited debate is important, but that does not extend to threats of violence or efforts to intimidate individuals based on their views. Now, what we're going to hear about when we actually hear from Merrick Garland is not much, right? As I've said many times on the show, that these congressional hearings are basically just opportunities for media spectacles. Everybody just wants to call somebody in and dunk on them and then make believe that they're actually doing something useful and productive. And both sides do it, right? Today, we're going to watch the Republicans dunk on Garland. When it's the Democrats' turn and there's a Republican in there, they're going to dunk on the Republicans. And it just goes around and around and around. They all want their little 2-minute clips to put on Twitter and say, I'm fighting for you, my constituents, when we all know it's just a big dog and pony show. They call Mark Zuckerberg in. They cut Jack Dorsey in. Oh, no, we're not doing anything. They all are doing everything. We all know they're doing everything, and nobody does anything about it. So it's going to be one of those things. But we are going to see Merrick Garland squirm a little bit and try to sort of, weasel his way out of answering questions. He's going to default back to this line. The only thing that I was talking about in my memo was violence, was just stopping violence. No, I don't want anything to do with intimidating, parents or chilling speech. We're not talking about stopping them from participating in developing the curriculum for their children. None of that. We're just talking about violence. And so we talk about how politicians use their weasel words and the different strategies that they'll use to sort of manipulate the conversation from expanding the scope of the argument to narrowing the scope of the argument. And so in this case, Merrick Garland's just going to narrow this puppy right down. We see very clearly that he writes about efforts to intimidate individuals, and you can also see he talks about harassment and intimidation, right? Whatever that means, it's a very subjective interpretation. Does going in front of your school board and saying, attention, school board, I'm angry that you are not reporting on a rape of a student that took place here. I'm very angry with you, and I think you should be fired and resigned, and I'm going to scream at you about it. Is that harassment? I mean, it might feel harassing. Does that justify the U.S. Department of Justice stepping in a situation like that? I don't think so. Merrick Garland does, though. He says threats against public servants are not only illegal, they also run counter to our nation's core values. I get so tired of that crap. Okay, they say that in every sentence, it feels like. Those who dedicate their time and energy to ensuring our children are safe are great. The department takes seriously these incidents, and we're going to use our authority to discourage these threats, identify them when they occur, and prosecute them when appropriate. Okay, the NSBA asked for intervention. Boom, on October 4th, they got it. They're going to announce a series of measures designed to address a rise in criminal conduct directed towards school personnel. It might include harassment or intimidation. I don't know. It might be intimidating to one of these school board members if somebody says, I'm going to run against you and make sure that you never win again. That kind of sounds scary. Maybe that concerns them. So he finishes this. He says coordination and partnership now with local law enforcement is critical. The federal government communicating with local law enforcement to get into 14,000 public schools. He says, to this end, I'm directing literally the FBI working with each U.S. state's attorney to convene with everybody all over the place within 30 days of this memo. Right? So November 4th is going to be 30 days. So we're going to get some answers on this real soon. He's directed every single United States attorney to go in conjunction with the FBI and start looking into these schools and the parents who maybe he's calling harassers and intimidators and potentially violent insurrectionists. Who knows? These meetings, he says, will facilitate strategies for addressing the threats against school administrators, board, teachers, members, all of that stuff. We're steadfast in our commitment to protecting people all across the United States and against other forms of intimidation and harassment. Okay, so this goes out now, and parents who were just saying, all we wanted to do was go talk about Johnny and Susie's, book report on critical race theory. Now we've got a threat from the U.S. DOJ indicating that the FBI is going to be investigating all of these different school board meetings that might lead to criminal prosecution further down the line. Wow, that's interesting. So the country has just made a pretty big shift in terms of, parenting and raising your kids and education and all of that. Interesting. Now, of course, after this memo came out, people like me and probably people like you were screaming from the rooftops, this is insane. The FBI, what are you talking about? The FBI now is getting involved in local school issues with rowdy parents and school boards. Okay. So we've talked about it, right? How everywhere you turn, the federal government is encroaching everywhere on state sovereignty, and this is just yet another example of it. So parents are outraged, screaming from the rooftops. Many states are now sort of petitioning that they're pulling their public school systems back out of the NSBA, that big overarching entity that sort of manages all these things. Everybody is starting bailing out, sending them letters, and so October 4th, Merrick Garland changes the policy. October 22nd, a couple weeks later, NSBA says, sorry about that first letter. You know that one we sent back in September? Shouldn't have done that. Here's what they said. They said, a much shorter letter, and you'll notice nobody signed this one. The first one had a signature. Look at these two knuckleheads. We had Viola Garcia over here. Over here, Nobody signed it. NSBA members from NSBA Board of Directors, they say, as you all know, there's been extensive media coverage and other attention recently around our letter to President Biden about the threats and the acts of violence against school board members. Wanted to write you directly. On behalf of the NSBA, we regret and apologize for the letter. Underlined, right? Underlined right there, first sentence, they mean it. Okay, we regret and apologize for the letter. Yeah, to be clear, safety of school and everybody's important. However, there was no justification for some of the language included in the letter. We should have had a better process in place to allow for the consultation on a communication of this significance. We apologize also for the strain and the stress the situation has caused you and your organizations. As we've reiterated since this letter was sent, we deeply value the work of everybody involved. Also, the voices of parents, they must be heard when it comes to decisions about their children's education, health, and safety. Going to do better moving forward, have a formal review process, all that stuff. We're going to take a look at this before we send it next time, is basically what they're saying. Nobody signed off on it. And so they just fired that puppy off. We regret and apologize for the letter. In fact, we concur with parents that they should have a lot to say about decisions when it comes to their children's education. Sorry about that. We read that one wrong a little bit. So, okay, good for them for, hearing about it. And you can see that the people who wrote the first letter definitely didn't have anything to do with the second letter. Their names aren't anywhere to be found on it. So Republicans, rightfully so, outraged about this. And they're making a big issue about it in particular because we got a very important election coming up in Virginia, I think in 6 days. And this is an issue that the Republicans can absolutely win on, right? It's a cultural issue. It's a popular issue. I think that the Democrats are on the wrong side of this one, but we'll see where it goes. But that being said, Republicans now are seizing on it. The House Republicans fired off a letter now after this apology letter. So on October 22nd, the NSBA says, we regret and apologize. Shouldn't have said that. You're not terrorists. So Republicans then say, okay, well, listen, now we're really upset. They say, Merrick Garland, Mr. Attorney General, you were here last week about your memo, your terrorist memo. You said that you issued the unusual directive soon after reading about the thinly sourced letter by the NSBA about your specific request for law enforcement. It says, you appear to be surprised that the department's press release publicizing your memorandum noted the involvement of the National Security Division, the departmental component responsible for prosecuting terrorism cases. Despite testifying that concerned parents expressing themselves is First Amendment activity. You admitted to being completely unaware of a widely reported high-profile case in Loudoun County, Virginia, cited in the letter. During your testimony, you sidestepped the obvious effect of your ill-conceived memo. Talking about First Amendment rights, parents have an undisputed right of to direct the upbringing of their children. Local law enforcement, not the FBI, are appropriate authorities. What they're asking for here is saying since on October 22nd, the NSBA expressed regret and formally apologized for this. And because the NSBA letter was the basis for your memo in the first place, we ask now that you fully and unequivocally withdraw your memorandum immediately. Jim Jordan signed it, Louis Gomart, we got Ken Buck, we got Mike Johnson, Andy Biggs, Matt Gaetz, Darrell Issa, and Steve Chabot. All members of Congress, all saying, revoke it. The NSBA wrote you to the White House, said parents are dangerous terrorists and we're scared to death. Can you do something about it? Merrick Garland, a week later, you got it, whatever you need. Parents are terrorists. Sick the FBI on them. There you go. Parents are outraged. NSBA revokes the first letter that prompted the DOJ memo. So if there's no basis for the memo anymore, you're going to revoke that, or are you still going to be unleashing the FBI being directed to interface with 13,000 public schools through the U.S. Attorney's Office? Yes or no? Because the memo is still in place. Even though the NSBA doesn't want your help anymore, they regret it, they use the wrong language, and they confirm that parents have a role in their children's education. What are you going to do about this? So the Republicans very unhappy with Merrick Garland, and they just blasted him today in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Got several clips here. And again, look, these are, Well, they're just, it's like a political blood sport at this point in time. Here's Cornyn. He's from Texas. He's asking about the chilling effect of the memo, which I think is a very valid question. Anytime that you start to say we're going to criminalize certain conduct, it causes a chilling effect. I'm a defense lawyer. I see how this works all the time. So you have to understand this, that the DOJ, which is a massive organization with entities everywhere, which has a budget that is insane, that has the entire arm of the federal government under its control through the FBI and all of these different agencies that are investigatory in nature, it's a scary thing for many people. Here is Cornyn from Texas going after Merrick Garland, asking about this. Have you given any thought to the chilling effect of this memo? Did you think about that before you drafted it? Here he is.
Can you imagine the sort of intimidation, the sort of bullying impact that a memorandum from the Department of Justice would have, and how that would chill the willingness of parents to exercise their rights under threat of federal prosecution? Did you consider the chilling impact your memorandum would have on parents exercising their constitutional rights?
The only thing this memorandum is about is violence and threats of violence, and it opens with a statement.
It's not
but
true.
My question is, did you consider the chilling effect this would have on parents' constitutional rights?
To say that the Justice Department is against violence and threats of violence.
Did you consider the chilling effect your memorandum might have on parents exercising their constitutional rights? I think you can answer that yes or no.
What I considered, what I wanted the memorandum to assure people that we recognize the rights of spirited debate. And so
Mr. Attorney General, you're a very intelligent and accomplished lawyer and judge. You can answer the question. Did you consider
I do not.
the chilling effect that this sort of threat of federal prosecution would have on parents' exercise of their constitutional rights to be involved in their children's education?
Don't believe it's reasonable to read this memorandum as chilling anyone's rights. It's about threats of violence, and it expressly recognizes the constitutional right to make arguments about your children's education.
As senators are going back and forth for votes during this time, we'll have to try to keep to
Let the record reflect the Attorney General refused to answer the question.
and let the record reflect that the senator from Texas was allowed to go over his allotted time, Senator Klobuchar.
All right, so they swap over after that. And the reason why I wanted to play that, right? Very simple question. Did you consider the chilling effect that this memo might have on parents being able to speak? And he doesn't talk about that at all, right? Does not answer that. Now, he did say specifically that it only goes to threats of violence and to violence. But that's not what his memo says. Okay, we just talked about that. As we underline here, talks about harassment and intimidation, talking about all of those other things that are related to violence and threats of violence. But all of this is being done to identify and use federal government resources when they basically, he says it right here, violence and or efforts to intimidate individuals based on their views. Intimidate. Okay, intimidate. And a lot of things can be intimidating, right? That don't necessarily conflate with violence. So he's being very squirrely there. He wrote a memo that talks about other permutations of it. It's not only violence, right? It's also sort of, people who are getting angry at these school board meetings. And so doesn't answer it, is given the opportunity 3 or 4 times, doesn't answer it, says, I think it's all about violence. It's not what was said. It's very yes or no. He's a constitutional lawyer. He was going to be on the Supreme Court. So it's like, yes, you said that you encourage free speech and open dialogue and parents being involved in their conversation about their children's educations, but your policy chills it nonetheless. So just because you said something doesn't mean it negates the policy. It's like when you say, hey, excuse me, with all due respect, you're a moron and an idiot. And the person gets mad at you and you say, well, you can't get mad at me. Well, why not? You call me a moron and an idiot. Yes, but I said with all due respect. So I meant respectfully. You don't get to talk like that, right? You can't just say and proffer one version of reality that doesn't match the policy that you put in the same memorandum. Okay, so that was an actual question. He had an actual opportunity to answer that. And now we're going to go check out some of the red meat, right? Mostly political spectacle, mostly for these politicians to sort of, bloviate and go make a couple of points, but doesn't make it wrong, does it, right? Doesn't make their tirades inaccurate. And so we can enjoy some of this together. Here is Ben Sasse, and he is diving in on the idea that potentially the DOJ, or the White House, more accurately, was actually colluding with the NSBA, the National School Board Association, in the creation of the first letter, right? So the first letter that we talked about in September was potentially concocted jointly by the White House. And if that was the case, that might explain why AG Garland had the October 4th memo drafted up and ready to go like within a week or however many days that was, right? September 29th to the 4th, whatever, very quickly. White House gets a letter. By the time it lands on Merrick Garland's desk, he's got a memo ready to go. Oh, we're going to change the entire Justice Department, right? This is not a small court on the corner with 3 staff people. This is the entire U.S. Justice Department talking about 13,000 schools. It's a big deal. So you would imagine that if an NSBA letter came in from the White House, the DOJ would meet with the White House, would meet with several other advisors, maybe the Department of Education, talk to Miguel Cardona, see what his thoughts are on this thing. No, just had a memo out. Just going to start unleashing the FBI on the whole country. Great. So Ben Sasse is digging in on this, saying, well, you guys wrote it together. How does that work? Here he is.
We received a letter from the National Association of School Boards. No reason to believe.
No, you didn't receive an anonymous letter. White House political staff co-wrote it with this organization, which is why the organization has rejected it. You know these facts now to be true, and yet you still won't disavow your memo. Why? You didn't receive some objective, neutral letter because all these people were being threatened. You are responding to a political campaign to politicize the Department of Justice. How big is the threat that American parents pose right now? When you lead a big organization, you have 100,000 plus employees. You have a lot of violence to go after. Are parents at school boards one of the top 3 concerns you face right now?
All right, so I don't get the answer on that one, but you can see it was a lot of that, right? It's a lot of just Republicans chiding him. And you probably have seen many of the different clips, and you may have seen, Cory Booker doing the same thing. Even the Democrats were like screaming at Merrick Garland today. It was a weird thing. Like when you're walking down, have you ever been to the an animal rescue center, for example, and you walk in and it's mostly quiet, but then one dog starts barking, and then guess what? The one right next to it starts barking, and before you know it, the whole facility is just barking. All the dogs are barking, right? That's what it was today in Congress. You have one congressman comes out, Merrick Garland, and then the other side does the same thing going back the other way. And so even the Democrats today where Cory Booker was screaming at him. I didn't clip it. Was screaming at Merrick Garland like, well, isn't it true that you love children and that you love parents having their education, being fostered with children? All right. But this one was a spicy one. So we're going to take this one. This was Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton is from Arkansas. And woo, boy, this was a spicy one. Sometimes you hear those mic drop moments that really just like hurt, that actually you can actually feel it because the verbal assault was just so aggressive. That's what happened here with Tom Cotton. Let's listen to this one.
You've cited as the basis for that directive the National School Board Association's letter of September 29th. Was that directive being prepared before September 29th, before the School Board Association letter was issued?
I don't believe so. Certainly, I didn't have any idea.
So it was only prepared okay, I think that answers the question.
I already answered that question
So you keep citing the school board letter and news reports.
Right.
One of the news reports cited in that letter, which you presumably mean, is from Loudoun County, Virginia.
No, that is not what I was talking about.
Well, you keep citing news reports, and that's the most prominent news report that anyone in America has seen. That refers to Scott Smith, whose 15-year-old daughter was raped. She was raped in a bathroom by a boy wearing girls' clothes.
Never heard of it.
The Loudoun County School Board covered it up because it would have interfered with their transgendered policy during Pride Month. And that man, Scott Smith, because he went to a school board and tried to defend his daughter's rights, was condemned internationally. Do you apologize to Scott Smith and his 15-year-old daughter, Judge?
Senator, anyone whose child was raped is the most horrific crime I can imagine, and is certainly entitled and protected by the First Amendment to protest to their school board about this.
But he was cited by the School Board Association as a domestic terrorist, which we now know that letter and those reports were the basis for your.
No, Senator,
this is
that's wrong.
Shameful, Judge. This is shameful. This testimony, your directive, your performance is shameful.
That's not.
Thank God you are not on the Supreme Court. You should resign in disgrace, Judge.
Whoa! 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 Tom Cotton. Whoa! That what? Oh man! Oh, I think I got something stuck in my back. Oh wow! That is rough. Whew. Look at that face. Look at that mean mug right there. He is not happy with him. You should not be on the Supreme Court. I'm glad you're not on the Supreme Court. Oh my goodness. That is like the most painful dig. Like, that's like every lawyer's dream is to be on the Supreme Court, not mine. But, every other lawyer's dream is to be on the Supreme Court, especially if you're going to be a government bureaucrat lawyer for, 40 years. Like, that's like the ultimate win. And when that was so close, when that was in his grasp, Merrick Garland was just one little hair away from sitting on that Supreme Court. Didn't happen for him. And man, Tom Cotton just brings out that and rubs his nose right in it. I don't know if I can endorse that, but that's Tom Cotton. I mean, man, really hit that one home. And he should resign in disgrace. Okay, well, that's how it went today. And so that was really probably the juiciest one. So we'll end up with that. Now, here is a little taste of what the Democrats were talking about. So the Democrats, this is Mr. Whitehouse, who is a part of a club in Rhode Island that only allows white people to be a part of it. So it's sort of a house for white people. Very appropriate name. He got an opportunity to ask the Attorney General about some questions today. What did he want to dig in on? Was it the schools? No. Take a wild guess what he was asking about. Here he is.
Very limited as to what I can say.
I understand that.
We have a criminal investigation going forward.
Please tell me it has not been constrained only to people in the Capitol.
The investigation is being conducted by the prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office and by the FBI field office. We have not constrained them in any way.
Great. And the old doctrine of follow the money, which is a well-established principle of prosecution, is
it's fair to
alive and well.
It's fair to say that all investigative techniques of which you're familiar, and some maybe that you're not familiar with because they post-date your time, are all being pursued in this manner.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Just while you're here, Mr. Attorney General, are you really investigating the Capitol Hill riot cases? Are you really going after those January 6th protesters? Yeah, we really are. What kind of mechanisms are you using? Well, some of the mechanisms that you're familiar with and some that you're not because you're so old. Okay, good. I don't have any questions for you. Nothing further. All right, so you get out. So you see what this is, right? Both sides are just talking about whatever they want to talk about. So that was that. Let's see what you have to say about that. A.G. Garland in the House or the Senate in this case. Let's take some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And our first one I saw come in before the show started from our friend Miss Lucky. Says, a little off topic. Sorry, we missed the show live yesterday. We had dentist checkups, which is always very appropriate. Says, listen to the show when we got home. Nice to meet your brother. Looks like he was enjoying himself. By the way, and she's telling me about the items that she likes on a certain food group, which we are not getting into today. All right. That was from Miss Lucky, and I'm sure Sergeant Bob is co-host over there. But this is not the food channel. Okay. We turned into the food channel yesterday on our last segment, and that will not be allowed here. Okay. I'm not Bobby Flay. I'm Robert Grueller. All right. Let's get back to business. All right. Good to see you, Miss Lucky. Oliver Close Off is here. Says, I watched the entire hearing today. Ted Cruz slam dunked on A.G. Garland. It was embarrassing. He looked like a lost puppy looking for his owner. So glad he was never confirmed to SCOTUS. I agree with that, Oliver Close Off. I think that it is a good thing that he's not on there. He's a pretty sort of meek guy, and I just don't think he's a strong jurist based on what I have seen out of him. Lisa Monaco is basically running the Justice Department anyways, as we have all seen. All right, so that was from Oliver Klozoff. Love that. We have John Delar says, the bottom line is anytime the left gets criticized, it's a national emergency. It's the worst thing ever. The sky is falling. There are a bunch of drama queens. Merrick Garland is an embarrassment. This just proves he shouldn't have been on the Supreme Court. Yeah, I think a lot of sentiment to that effect. Thunder 7 says, Mark Levin read the letter out loud and called a lunatic left out for calling parents domestic terrorists. And now the Ohio School Board is throwing the NSBA to the curb, severing all membership and affiliation. Yeah, so Ohio's out, right? And a lot of different states are sort of formalizing that conversation right now. They stand by the parents and not the Marxist Dems. This is going to create a domino effect with other school boards ditching them. Don't mess with Mama and Papa Bears, Garland. You won't win. And this action is just beginning to end your tyranny. Yeah, it's like, it seems like that would be the dumbest constituency to go after, right? Parents and their children in schools. It's like a lot of other things. Like you can go after small business owners. What are we going to do about it? You can go after certain demographics if you bundle them up in certain ways, right? Like, white males, for example, bundle them up. Oh, they're so terrible, which we're going to talk about in the next segment. But, you can do it. But if you're just going after parents and kids, it's like, well, I don't know that Mama and Papa Bears, right? They're not going to get out of the way on that thing. So kind of seems like a dumb tactical move for a political party. John Halgren says, federal involvement. Are we facing an issue as large and potentially dangerous as desegregation? Isn't that the last time the feds got involved with local schools? Is being angry a crime? Expressing emotions is natural, but it seems like simply being emotional gets you labeled as dangerous. I don't see the off-ramp here. Yeah, and that's exactly right, John. There is no sort of limiting principle on the upper end of that, right? Violence, we can all basically understand that. But what is intimidation? What is harassment? What justifies the FBI showing up at your door? If you stand up at a school board meeting and you say, hey, dumb moron school board members, I'm really sick of whatever. I think you're all idiots and you should all be fired. And I'm angry. And I'm going to work till the end of the earth to make sure that you never make it back on the board. You say that. What do you get? You get a phone call from the FBI now? Do they show up at your door? Hey, Mr. Grueller, you got a little bit aggressive there with that language. Just wanted to have a conversation with you about that. Do you happen to be a gun owner? Oh, you are? Oh, okay, great. So how about I just, can I see that? You mind if I come in? No. You're not allowed in. I do mind. Thank you. Remember the 1, 2, 3 rule. No, not without a warrant. Don't come in. Thank you, John Halgren. I agree with you. John Delar says, anyone else notice that Merrick Garland has a strong resemblance to Dr. Fauci? They all do kind of look alike. You know who else looks alike? Jake Sullivan, Ned from the State Department. He's a spokesperson over there. And John from the Pentagon, whatever his last name was. They all have very long, slender, narrow faces. Geomancy Games, subscribe on YouTube, says, it's all part of the plan to have the state raise your kids. From cradle to grave or government involvement, I wish I could get together with local parents, form our own co-op style homeschooling, but every avenue is full of people watching, removing, investigating all comments on the topic. Yeah, that's interesting. And, I don't obviously have kids, but I've always wondered what is sort of stopping parents from creating their local, sort of local pods for some of this stuff. Now, obviously a lot, right? There's a lot that goes into that. But I think that if parents, over the let's say next decade or so get sick of dealing with this stuff, what does that decoupling process look like? And what does the next transition look like? I just think it's interesting. I don't have kids, but who knows where that goes. X is here, says, advice to all locals. If the FBI comes knocking at your door without a warrant, don't talk to them. Anyways, I wish local and state officials stepped their foot down and told the DOJ, FBI to F off. Likely won't happen. Yeah, probably not. Look what they do. They're all they just follow the orders everywhere you turn. Good to see you. We have Southson Academy says, the letter makes a great template for other current events that are taking place. Just replace the nouns and the pronouns with the groups that are being ostracized today by the left and send it to Joe Biden. See what happens. Probably nothing. Yeah, probably nothing. It's the wrong group because it's not really based on principles. It's more based on identities. And we have to juggle identities based upon whatever our current policy posture looks like. Good to see you, Sousen. We have Geomancy says, looks like they signed that memo with blue crayon. Kind of fitting. It is the Justice Department. A lot of crayons there. Perry Mason Aries says, Garland needs to be impeached. Just bitter he was denied the SCOTUS appointment. He's just another tool of the Marxist cabal. Everybody's in there just sort of being, shuffled around, playing the game they need to play. Monster One says, the school boards of Ohio and Missouri both withdrew from the NSBA. Go woke, go broke. I love it. So I didn't know that. Ohio, Missouri. I saw a map saying that a lot of states have started that process. But yeah, I mean, they are seeing the dominoes falling. They're going, oh, crap. Maybe we shouldn't call the parents of the children who go to the schools that we run terrorists. So they had to stop the bleeding. It's good. Chairman of the board says, the Pennsylvania School Board and the Ohio School Board officially cut ties yesterday. I wonder if the backlash is why they issued their statement. As chairman of the board, I approve these steps. I guess board and board are different words, but I blame my school board for my education. Do you see that? Did you see he used the wrong word there or the correct word? My school board, like I'm bored at school, not a board of people. It's very clever there, chairman of the board. Board, not a group of people. All right, we have another one from former LEO says, there it is. How about the school board member who climbed down from his seat, approached the parent, threatened him with bodily harm, had to be restrained, possibly by law enforcement, from assaulting the peaceful, still sitting parent? Appears that the radically violent school board members should have prevented from assaulting parents. Was that school board member taken into custody? And what are the results of that DOJ investigation? Good question, former LEO. Don't think I saw that story, but yeah, it's a good question. Goes both ways. We have Christiana is here, says, so if the original request is revoked, then the memorandum is now legally based on what? Can it legally stand on its own, or can these people just write memos about whatever the heck they feel like writing? Yeah, they can, right? They can just change memo. They can just change policies however they want. That's one of the powers of being in that position. You get to run your agency however you want to. Now, historically, there are norms in place, like you don't unleash the federal law enforcement agencies on local schools. That was kind of a thing that we did well in America. Did not have the FBI going in and getting involved in these issues for, I don't know, a few hundred years. Seemed like it worked out. But that norm has been broken. And the justification was on the back of this fake letter that even the White House maybe helped write. So we know that this is what they were going to do. This is what they wanted to do anyways. We've already talked about this, right? The idea that federal law enforcement agents are going to be popping up in your backyard. Capitol Hill Police setting up shops all over the place. We're talking about, I think, even looking at school boards, not through the FBI, like came out in this memo, but they were talking about filing civil rights claims and things like that under the Department of Education, using the Department of Treasury to go after people. They are encroaching, they are using any mechanism of the federal government to come in and take over control of some facet of your life. They're using OSHA soon for even putting something into your body. So this is not anything new. They just needed something as a pretext in order to justify the original policy. They don't care if it's not relevant anymore because they got done what they wanted to get done. Merrick Garland's not reversing anything. Republicans know that. Monster One says, Ted Cruz one is the best. Garland looks like a scolded child when Ted is going at him. Maybe I should have got that one. I didn't see that one. Soul Viking says, I think the bottom line is that we are so fortunate to not have Garland as a SCOTUS member, considering what we have seen from him. Less than impressive, to be kind. Yeah, he's just not an impressive jurist, with all due respect. We have another one from Nadarb says, you got to make sure that you clip the section where you are comparing the words on his letter to what he kept saying over and over so I can send it to my Senator Tom Cotton in the hopes it will piss him off enough to do more than talking in front of the camera, although I do appreciate him saying he's glad he's not on the Supreme Court and that he should resign in disgrace. I personally think he should resign in cuffs, but that's just me. That's from Nadarb. Yeah, Tom Cotton was fired up. And I loved it. Mustang Jeff says, wait, what? You don't want to be on SCOTUS? I will nominate you every day. Keep up the great work. Well, Mustang Jeff, if I could live stream from the chamber, then maybe I'd consider it. It'd be a lot of fun. We could do oral arguments just like on this show. This country would be in flames in one term. Be Brave says, Tom Cotton on fire. Garland felt that one. Yeah, that was an intense one. You know, like when you're arguing with an ex or something and you're like, that was a zinger. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But Tom Cotton, he said it. He didn't think twice about it. He said it. And yeah, it hurt. Merrick Garland from Harvard says, memo, what memo? I didn't even know what this memo is. It's extremely long, filled with made up words, basically a bunch of nonsense. You know what I think? Cory Booker, Mr. Potato Head, broke into my house, logged into my computer, and just sent it to harass me. Also, that Supreme Court comment hurt my feelings. Merrick Garland's going to need, probably a nice warm bath, a glass of wine, and, maybe an Ambien or something. CP Miller says, let's go, Tom. Who's Tom? We have Nadarb says, is that Weichsfold Club in RI called Cracker Barrel or the Honky? I can't read that here. It's called the Bailey's Beach Club is actually what it's called. And it's a racist club that was flying under the river for a long period of time, or under the wind for a long period of time. And now it's public. I'm Not Gas says, Merrick Garland supports children in drag giving lap dances to teachers. What is this? Let's take a look at this. Oh, there's an investigation underway after a Kentucky high school. I can't play this on this. Oh, gosh. All right. So that's good. More school stuff. Maybe the FBI will look into that. Probably not. Let's see what else. We've got Shade says, did you see the smirks on Garland's face while the White House guy was questioning? What was that about? He was actually holding back a smiling, looked to me like an inside joke. Well, they're on the same team and they're playing patty cake. And so when you're on the same team and you play patty cake, it's kind of funny, like try it. This is ridiculous. We're actually doing this in public. We look like morons right now. But I guess everyone else is enjoying it, so I guess we'll just keep playing this game. So that's basically what it was. White House saying, are you going to do what I want you to do? And he says, yes, I'm doing what you want me to do. Okay, great. And next question. A couple more. NY Renal MD says, Ruth Ginsburg with pancreatic cancer had 10 times more energy and vigor. We dodged a bullet with Garland. I think that's accurate. I really do. I think Ruth was a different caliber of a jurist, even though I disagreed with most of her work. Feisty Lady says, it will be interesting to see parents and community reactions to this new school event in Kentucky. Article on the photos with Gateway. Kentucky school staff, including town mayor, photographed getting lap dances. Yeah, we just opened that article. One of the Hazard High School staff members who was photographed getting a lap dance by a scantily clad male student was the principal, Donald Happy Mobilini, who is also the mayor of Perry County City. Oh my goodness. Well, it's sort of, this stuff is everywhere, folks. Right? We talked about the other case of the judge, right? The judge who was filming the boys in his bathroom who, died by suicide shortly thereafter that, right? This is everywhere. It's just, covered up a lot of the time. As we saw in Loudoun County. The Last Villain says, laughing at the food censorship, White House got it right. Follow the money. Garland's family is connected to CRT, as corrupt as the Bidens. All these bills are funneling money to fines and family on everyone's back. Parents were lazy and complacently. Hopefully, now the kids aren't screwed up. That's from The Last Villain. Yeah, follow the money. It's all about the money. Former LEO says, the proper response to the question of, do you own a gun is not yet. So if the FBI comes and asks you that, I think that's what Monster One is saying. Not yet. Monster One says, in my response about my comment about Biden deflecting the Let's Go Brandon stuff, apparently he shot a commercial or an ad that features a handicapped guy named Brandon who is thanking Biden for his Build Back Better agenda. Clearly an attempt to either label the Let's Go Brandon memes hate speech or an attempt to make it seem like people are supportive of this handicapped guy. Oh, interesting. Oh, I see what they're doing. So it's probably just to sort of take the edge out of it. It's like, oh, we know it's there, and so we're going to go hang out with Brandon, and let's go Brandon, and we're embracing this, and we're being supportive of Brandon, who's handicapped, which is, nice. I support Brandon. And also, let's go Brandon. Hugh Jass is here, says, I noticed that none of this hearing is found anywhere on left-wing stations or outlets. I looked everywhere and couldn't find it. Media is acting like hiding Biden. That's from somebody. We have Miss Lucky's here says, I wonder if Garland is getting tips from Fauci. Ugh. Yeah, they're two peas in a pod, aren't they? Nadarb says, did you see the clip of a school board meeting where they were forcing the parents to give out their name and exact address before they speak, and then they can only speak on what's listed on the outline, and the woman even said parents cannot criticize school board members or else they're going to be banned from all future meetings. Makes me furious to even watch the clip. I'll find it if you haven't seen it. I have not seen that. No, I think I read about that. You know, so I don't know about the address thing, but like when I go and speak in front of City Hall, I've done it twice now. One successfully, one not successfully. I have to give my address, right? My name's Robert. I'm in the city of Scottsdale. This is my address. This is my home address, my office address. And so, you know, those are things that sometimes you just have to say, I think, just as part of, you know, the formal rules, just to show that you live in that district, essentially. That's what the address is for. Oh, you live here. Great. So I know where that is, right? Many of the board members and people in these areas know what the precincts are. And they say, I know where that is. That's in my district. That's my constituency, stuff like that. B. Brave says, I want to see a replay of the guy with dreadlocks in California who was channeling Alex Jones at the school board meeting. Refreshing. I think he was referenced in the Garland memo. I don't recall that one. Yeah, I don't recall that one. There's been some amazing videos. People are speaking out. Monster One says, did anyone see the video of the school board? So I think so it talks about the entire name and address. One guy was uncomfortable, tried to stay away from the address, but they made him repeat it into the microphone so everybody could hear it. Yeah, they're getting fishy, aren't they? Leafy Bug says, I can see why Obama tapped Garland for SCOTUS, superficially moderate, but able to be led about by the nose. If confirmed, he would have easily been press-ganged onto the liberal wing. That's one thing we should credit to Cocaine Mitch. 2 out of the 3 Trump SCOTUS picks were far from great, but any of them preferable to Garland, who would have probably been essentially Sotomayor's battered spouse on the bench. That's from Leafy Bug. And that is some astute legal analysis there. Yeah, Sotomayor's battered spouse on the bench. You know, that's a pretty damn good visual there. I don't think that is far off. Soul Viking says, I wonder if Merrick has had time to look into the Loudoun County boys in the skirt case. Well, yes. So I don't know, Soul. You know, that was one that he said he did not hear about. Remember when he was at the House? Here we go. It's been on national TV for the last several weeks, kind of a big story. A lot of people are upset about it. And he said, well, I don't pay attention to local state cases. And I said, that's interesting because that very day, the Department of Justice came out with a press release and said that they just had a big settlement in a school case in Utah that same day, a local state case. Now, that involved African-American students. This involved I think a regular gendered heterosexual white female, as far as I can tell. So, two different standards there. CP Miller says, let's go Brandon is today, let's go Tom, as in Tom Cotton. Got it. I'm a little slow. You have to clarify some of those things for me. I appreciate it. I got it now. Former LEO says, I was working LEO. I told my wife at the time, if Internal Affairs ever showed up the door to ask them questions, slam the door in their face, call 911, scream into the phone, first out the address, there are men with guns who want to get in my home and hang up. That's not bad advice. Don't talk to the police, man. It's part of the rules. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, I think you're onto something. I could totally picture you with the studio headphones as a commentator streaming from the courtroom. I know there have been shows like Judge Judy. I would watch the Robert Gruller ESQ show. Oh, wait, I already do. That's right, Jeremy, you do. Yeah, could you imagine me up there, Judge Judy style, with American constitutional issues? Oh, abortion. Oh, what do you say about that? Well, what do you say about that? Well, here's the verdict, America. Live with it. Maybe one day, my friends. Maybe one day. X says, did you hear about Fauci's alleged puppy experiments? I did hear about it, but due to the monstrous nature of that man, we're not going to cover that here on the show. Duncan, which, yeah, it's a terrible thing that he did. Duncan McConier said, oh my gosh. I don't know. Mick Oinker? I don't know what that one says. Appreciate you, Rob. I think we dodged a big one. Mitch keeping Garland off the SCOTUS. I don't know what that name was, but it seems dangerous. Monster One says, breaking news, Garland just opened an investigation into Tom Cotton because he terrorized Garland's feelings. Breaking news, Garland just opened an investigation into Tom Cotton because he terrorized Garland's feelings. Love that. Bumma Lickett says, hey, Rob. Hello, fellow beautiful watchers. What's so upsetting? They've got caught and yet they try to justify it. Cory Booker even compared the school shooting to the parents expressing their frustration. He did that. I saw that. No one's defending anymore. Who wants to do physical harm? Yeah, he went through and he said, yeah, I mean, we have school shootings and things like that, and therefore you are 100% justified using the FBI to investigate parents. Abraham Lincoln says, my AG never acted like this. Put this guy in a jail cell. Parents are not criminals. And our last one here, I'm Not Gas, says school board name and address clip. Let's see if we can play this real quickly here while we got this open. Thanks for the clip. That's a minute.
A business meeting of the school board. It is not a meeting that belongs to the public. Each speaker is asked to state his or her name and address for the record. Failure to do so will result in an individual not being allowed to speak. John, can you give us your name and address, please?
My name is John Wickland. I live in Mankato.
Could I get your address, please, John?
I'd rather not, since you guys
Don't
have
give
it
your
already.
address, you can't speak.
And I get so much property damage and eggs and everything else from fun people and their friends.
John,
happening to be on
you
the
need
school
to
board.
give your address.
All right, I live on 5th Street.
Excuse me?
I live on 5th Street.
House number? Thank you.
All right. So are our kids safe?
Effective tonight, the school board will enforce the following guidelines. Open forum participants are prohibited from calling out or addressing any individual school board or school district staff member. If this occurs, open forum will be closed and the individual will not be allowed to participate in future open forums. Crowd noise or any sort of grandstanding during open forum, including applause, talking, hollering, or any outbursts will result in open forum being closed. Further, beginning at the November 1st school board meeting, open forum participation will be limited to those individuals who wish to speak to an item on the board agenda. The board agenda is always made available the Thursday prior to our meetings, and they are always on the district website.
Thank you, Jody Sapp. Yeah, thank you, Jody. Well done there, Jody. Way to keep order in your little school board over there. All right, so that was from I'm Not Gas. Let's see. What a scene. So I guess that's just how it goes. All right, those were great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We got an amazing community over there, all chatting away. Shout outs to Radicy. We got B Spec in the house, 3 girlies. We got Resident Bedoin in the here. We've got Lisa Lemon, Bispec, 3 girlies. Ronnie Cole signed up. Good to see you, Ronnie. And many others over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you for checking out our community. Okay, and we've got another segment here. What are we talking about? Look at that sun coming in. I got to figure that out. All right. We're talking about, oh yes, this guy. A white male just won a $10 million verdict. Oh my goodness. And why did he win it? Reverse discrimination. A jury out of North Carolina came out and found that this gentleman, a guy by the name of David Duvall, was discriminated against so seriously that he was entitled to punitive damages. So we're going to go through this lawsuit. It's David Duvall against Novant Health, and he was claiming reverse discrimination after 2 women got promoted above him, a woman named Kate Everett and a woman named Vicky Free. In 2018, his company had this diversity hire push, and he got booted in favor of these 2 other women. So he filed a lawsuit, and the jury came out $10 million verdict. So we're going to take a look at this. Headline over from North Carolina says that, yeah, a white male, a former Novant Health executive who is a white male, won 10 million buckaroos. That's a lot of money, especially for a white male. Novant Health is ordered to pay punitive damages, right? And so those are penalty damages. That means that somebody did something wrong and they are being punished for it, right? You typically have what are called nominal damages, which are just sort of like nominal, right? They don't really do much of anything. You can have a verdict that's a $1 verdict. Yes, you won, but the damages weren't really anything, and so we're just going to give you $1. It's called a nominal damage. It doesn't really equate to anything of monetary value. Then you have what are called compensatory damages. Compensatory damages are, let's say you're in a car accident and you hurt your back, and so you've got to go and get a bunch of therapy and physical treatment and all this stuff in order to repair your back. That's going to cost money to compensate you for that treatment, right? You're going to be compensated for that. You're also going to get a multiplier for your pain and suffering and all your time off of work and all of those things. You're being compensated for your loss. But there's another type of damages called punitive. That's just you're a jerk. You did something wrong, and we're going to punish you for it. And that's exactly what the jury did to this hospital. So let's go through this. Attorney for David Duvall, somebody named Lark Largess, said that his client won $10 million. He's a white male. He was the senior vice president for marketing and communications over at Novant. He was there for 5 years, and we're going to break that down because they booted him right before the anniversary. Pretty interesting. He was fired and replaced by 2 women, one a racial minority, during a diversity and inclusion initiative in 2018. That included explicit goals to remake the demographics of Novant's senior leadership. Okay, so I mean, like that's part of their company policy, right? So we're gonna, let's go through this and just see what the company did. A jury in the U.S. District Court out of North Carolina sided with Duvall, said in court records that Duvall, the white male, proved that his race, being Caucasian, and his sex, being a male, was a motivating factor in Novant's decision to terminate him, and that Novant did not prove that it would make the same decision regardless of his race or sex. And so we're going to break this down. Before we do, let's take a look at this white male. Let's see what he looks like. Here he is. Oh my goodness, there he is. And boy, does he look white. Look at that suit and tie on there. It's just baby blue, hair is parted. Definitely a white guy. David Duvall was fired by Novant Health in 2018, replaced by 2 women. Let's take a look at these women. Oh my goodness, they're actually women. Probably. We have on the left, Kate Everett. On the right, we have Vicky Free. And we have 2 different ethnicities. So we have a white woman and an African-American woman over there. So, I don't know what that does to the official algorithm on diversity or inclusion. I don't know if you get points or how any of this works, but that's who we're talking about. Now let's take a look at the lawsuit and what happened here. You can see we got a jury verdict yesterday, 10/26, October 26, 2021. We have a verdict, and before we get there, we're going to look at the actual complaint. So recall that this was filed some time ago, actually in 2019, and it's been working its way through the court system for about 2 years now. And we just got a verdict because this thing went to trial. There was no settlement. They weren't able to negotiate any of this stuff out. And so in 2019, this was the original lawsuit. David Duvall, as we can see, suing as a plaintiff, Novant Health. So let's go through it briefly. You can see filed out of North Carolina's Charlotte division, because again, you can really see what's happening here. And we want to break down what the jury saw. The jury came out in this whole thing and said, yes, this was wrong. You deserve $10 million. Maybe we can piece together why. So we take a look at the complaint. We get some facts here. Under paragraph 9, it says plaintiff had a successful career. He was in marketing. He was in public relations. They hired him in 2013. He was the senior vice president. He reported to somebody named Jesse. Jesse was the executive vice president. It goes executive, then senior. He worked out of Mecklenburg County. Plaintiff was hired to an agreement. He was called a Tier 2 executive under the compensation plan. In those terms, he had specific severance benefits as a Tier 2 executive. If after at least 6 months, but less than 5 years of employment, he was terminated, he's entitled to 12 months of severance. See that? So in other words, if he gets fired within a certain time frame, he gets certain benefits. And you're going to see what this company did to try to screw him out of those benefits. Upon 5 years of employment, we have a different severance amount. And then there's additional severance amount under normal circumstances, about 30 days termination. Okay. So this is all about severance, but he gets some of it without prior warning and without any explanation as to why. Novant terminated him 2018, ordered him off the premises immediately, 5 days before his 5th work anniversary. No explanation as to why normal circumstances did not exist for that termination. Been there for 4.5 years, almost 5 years, gone. Pack your stuff, get out of here. Jesse Curtin notified plaintiff of this decision. Remember, Jesse was who he worked for, and offered no explanation for it. Said the decision had nothing to do with his performance. He'd done everything asked of him and more. So David's just sitting there. Jesse walks into his office, says, sorry, you're great. Got to go. Pack your stuff up. Get out of here today. In fact, plaintiff's performance during his 5 years with the defendant, very highly rated, internally, externally. Inside the company, strong evaluations from Jesse every year. Conducted performance reviews, did great. For his team, he got 95 out of 100 each year. High-level workplace satisfaction. Everyone on his team loved him. Numerous steering committees, strategic councils. He co-led the medical group COO, a unique and extensive program for digital health consumers. Successfully rolled out June 2018 before he was fired. Externally, marketing projects. He had industry-wide recognition awards. One of the 4 leaders of a national consumer consortium. In fact, he was so productive, the lawyer says here, that Novant split his duties between 2 separate positions, promoting one of plaintiff's direct reports, a white female, into a new role of chief communications officer, hiring a black female as leader of marketing. Okay, so this guy, one guy, did marketing and communications, but he's white. Oh, don't you hate that? So he had to go, and he was so efficient and competent that he had to be replaced by 2 women. One who was a direct report, one who worked under him, so she got a bump. And they went and found, of course, a black female, because our goal here is diversity. So 2 female replace 1 guy. All right. Now, Novant fired plaintiff without warning or cause. It was part of an intentional campaign to promote diversity. It's boasted about this stuff publicly. The following persons, all white men, were separated from Novant and replaced by either a racial minority or female in a period of 12 months. And they give you a list. So they give us a list here. On information and belief, like plaintiff, all were terminated suddenly without warning. So they go through the list. They have the chief legal officer replaced by a black male, medical group president replaced by a black female, chief information officer replaced by a white female, patient experience officer replaced by a white female, president of Haymarket Medical Center replaced by a black male. So, did you ever see that scene in Game of Thrones, The Red Wedding, when they just execute everybody? Spoiler alert. Yikes. Sorry about that if you haven't seen it yet. If you haven't seen it yet, that's just your own damn fault, isn't it? But it's like that. It was just Friday the 13th. Everybody just, whoop, gone. While the goal of achieving diversity in leadership has recognized value, there was no justification or purpose here other than to achieve diversity or adverse employment based on race or gender. Plaintiff was terminated. Let's see here. Further, defendant purposely did not give the plaintiff 30 days notice expected. Why? Because they wanted to avoid him reaching his 5th year anniversary and becoming eligible for the severance plan. Okay, so they structured it so that they didn't have to pay him severance. Plaintiff was terminated just weeks after an email announcing plans to recognize him and others for their 5 years of service. Oh, hey, David, we're going to throw a party for you. Congratulations on being here for 5 years. 6 days before the party, he's fired. So he was unemployed for nearly a year, lost severance pay out of 18 months. So he wants a bunch of money for this. He's filing several different claims. He says that the first claim for relief is a violation under Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act. He was a white male performing well. He was nonetheless replaced because of his gender and race. He was performing at such a high level that they had to divide his duties between a white female and a black female. And defendant's termination was only for the purpose of improving diversity based on sex and race. In other words, it's discriminatory. They screwed him out of his severance pay. They go through the law here. 29 U.S. Code also says unlawful to discriminate against people, especially to deny them and kick them out of their compensation plan. And so there were a lot of other claims in there. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can see how this worked. Now, what they're asking for, they got full equitable relief. They got compensatory damages. And then, boy, oh boy, did they get punitive damages. You can see Luke Largesse got a big fat verdict on this one. Here's what the jury came back with. They answered these questions. Question number 1. Filed October 26 out of Charlotte, North Carolina, saying, 1, has plaintiff David Duvall proven that his race, being white and being a male, was a motivating factor in Novant Health's decision to terminate him? Answer, yes. Number 2, has Novant Health proven that it would have made the same decision to terminate David regardless of his race and or sex? No. He was doing great. If it was an African-American guy or a female doing the same job, he'd still be there. And then number 3, what amount of punitive damages should be awarded against Novant Health? $10 million. Look at that, baby. Right there. That is a good day for Luke Largesse and for David Duvall. Very happy about that. Signature of the foreperson, name of the foreperson. So if the North Carolina jury was not happy about what they heard that Novant was doing. Now, they came out and they said, we're very disappointed by this. We are extremely disappointed with the verdict. We believe it's not supported by the evidence presented at trial, which includes our reason for Mr. Duvall's termination. We're going to pursue all legal options, including an appeal over the next several weeks and months. Novant is one of thousands of organizations to put in place robust diversity and inclusion programs, which we believe can coexist alongside non-discriminatory blah, 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 including white men. It's important that everybody knows this. So it's important everybody knows that they're for diversity, inclusion, and equity for all, unless it involves white guys, especially old white guys who are very competent like that guy. So let's see what you have to say about this over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Now, I do suspect that they appeal it. I'm not sure that they actually get $10 million, but we'll see, right? That's a big, fat verdict, and we'll see what an appeals court does with that. They might narrow that down a little bit. We'll see. Speech Unleashed says, I suddenly have renewed faith that our whole society isn't completely woke. Whatever happened to picking the best person for the job? Regardless of skin, sex, age, sexual preference, etc. I would feel so pathetic if the reason I got hired for a job was due to something like my sex, skin color, or ethnicity. So tired of things being looked at in terms of catering to the lowest common denominator. I agree with you completely. I think a better standard by which society should be structured is competence. Are you competent at the task? If you are, well, we're going to consider that to be a nice quality and give you more responsibilities provided you continue to do them competently. It's worked pretty well. Be Brave says, 2 women? I question that. Well, we don't want to be presumptive here, right? We're not making fun of their physical appearance, but we just don't want to be presumptive. It is 2021. They do work for a very inclusive company. Who knows who knows how they identify? We don't know what their pronouns are. So that's all. Not being mean. Just don't know what their pronouns are. We don't know. We have Sergeant Bob says, great verdict. Race relations were going well until this diversity mania. This has affected my personal views in many ways. I grew up in the 50s and 60s in Chicago. We've come a long way without quotas in unfair preferences. That's from Sergeant Bob. Shout out to Sergeant Bob in the house and Miss Lucky. Good to see you both. Glad you're here. Leafy Bug says, Rob, you are a white male and you didn't go to Oxford. So clearly you're not as smart as Jake Sullivan. It's very problematic. That's true, Leafy Bug. Thank you for reminding me. I actually even had a hard time almost reading that sentence there. I got to remember, I didn't go to Yale. Yeah. Well, that's okay. I'm going to try to continue to live anyways. We have Barry Mason Harry says, one guy did what 2 women were hired for? Those women were surely underpaid. Guess gender equality and pay didn't exist in that company. Yeah, it's the whole thing's just, comical now. I hope they have to pay $10 million. I hope it's worth it for them. I really do. I hope it's worth it. John Halgren says, we've done it. We have successfully discriminated against everyone. Yeah, everything. Everybody. Can you believe that this is the society that we're living in right now? That we're having these arguments? that we're going into lawsuits and fighting for 2 years over hiring, black and white and this race and that gender and this pronoun and all this crap. It's a healthcare company. They're supposed to treat people for medical problems. What are they talking about? I don't know. I guess if you have a more, I guess healthcare is better if you have a more diverse hospital or something. I don't know. Well, hopefully they figure it out and they don't get hit with another verdict. The Last Villain says, I was just saying this yesterday. I was against affirmative action. This is evidence. 2 people to just manage his duties. They didn't settle because they thought this woke environment was going to stack the jury in the cult's favor. Have to get these people in the pocket. Yeah, they're probably very surprised by that. All of these just probably a bunch of white guys on that jury. Can you believe that? I wonder what that jury selection looked like. But it is federal court, so it's a little bit different there. BLM is here. Shout out to BLM in the house. Former LEO says, this sounds like the night of the long knives, just like the country in Europe that can't be mentioned. How about the majorities that also got fired because it looks like a big payday for them? I'm not sure who you're talking about there. Yeah, 10 million. 10 million is a big payday. That lawyer also got a big payday. I'm Not Gas says, great, we can sue when we are fired for our race. But when we can go after the discriminatory hiring practices that award, quote, points for your skin color and lack of dangly bits between your legs. But when can we go after the discriminatory hiring practice? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not an employment lawyer. I'm not sure how any of that stuff works, candidly. But it seems like you'd be able to file a claim, right? If somebody comes in and you say, I'm not going to hire you because you are a black man. That's a catastrophic problem, isn't it? Yes, it is, right? It's a racist thing to do. And so now we have a situation where they're saying, well, we're not going to hire you because you're a white man. And isn't that also problematic? Like, isn't that standard problematic? I've always thought that, but I don't know. I'm white, so what do I know? We have another one from Ivana something. We're not going to read the last name. Says, I'm glad to see the outcome of this lawsuit. It was one on merit and truth, not on white privilege. By the way, thanks for ruining Game of Thrones for me. I just started watching it last month. Well, you should have. I don't know what took you so long, by the way. It's not my fault. I'm not taking responsibility for that. Watch it faster. John Delar says, as a white male, I'm discriminated against every day. That's why white men are committing suicide in droves. I happen to know something a little bit about that. Something that kind of hit close to home in my family over that. Southern Academy, which I don't disagree on a lot there. Southern Academy says competence. Is that what we have in the White House? No, I'm not real sure what we have in there, but I wouldn't put this competence label on that. That's for sure. Chairman of the board says 10 million, pff, just more white male privilege at work. If this were a woman, they'd only be able to settle for 7.8 million because a woman doesn't make as much as a man. Everybody knows this. Welcome to the new America, where everything is so rotten. Sergeant Bob says, would you then recommend my grandson go to ASU instead of Yale or Oxford? He does play high school football on an undefeated team this season. You know, Sergeant Bob, I don't know what my thoughts are on college or higher education at this point. I would say if you have a purpose for going, a serious answer would be if you have a purpose for going to college, then I would consider that purpose. If you were, just kind of going to figure life out, I'm not sure that I would do it these days. I think that used to be a kind of a good option because it would allow you to go explore. Like that's what I did. When I went to college, didn't know that I wanted to be a lawyer, knew I wanted to get into politics and public speaking, started in political science. And in those 4 years, I was able to sort of explore a couple things, try some things educationally, and then make a decision. And I found law school kind of accidentally, but I knew I wanted to go in that direction. But to be fair, right, there's a lot of other things that I could have done with my time that would have been more productive. I feel like, honestly, I'm very lucky that I sort of stumbled into this career path that I'm in. Whereas I could have had a lot more structure, been a lot more clear-headed about what I wanted to accomplish. And if I had that in mind, like if I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, I wouldn't have gone to ASU, right? I would have picked a different school. But I wasn't really focused at that time. So I would say that it kind of depends on where your grandson is at, But look, if you can get into Yale or Oxford and you want to be a part of the Jake Sullivan crew, make a lot of money, have a very easy life. All you have to do is wake up, go on CNN, read a bunch of garbage about why Afghanistan was a success. It's a pretty cushy lifestyle. If you can get into Oxford or Yale and go hang out with those people, may not be a bad thing. Let's see. We have another one here from Monster One says, sorry, I think this gets overturned. Live in North Carolina. It's an at-will state, which means people can fire at will without cause. They will get this in front of a lefty judge who will vacate the judgment. It's probably not going to be a check being written for $10 million, but it's still, right? We take little victories when we have them. A white person is here, says, victory at last for white supremacists. Ugh. Yeah, I know. That's a joke, folks. I'm not actually saying that. A. Hitler, the artist, not Adolf, the artist, is here. He says, before moving to Germany, I was rejected twice by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts in my home country of Austria because I was white. I know exactly how this feels. Only if I had a better last name like Hunter. sometimes you're so close, but yet so far. Hitler, worldwide dictator. Hunter, amazing artist. Sometimes people just, catch the raw end of the deal, especially if you're trying to be an artist. A. Hitler, the artist, caught the raw end of that one. Gigum says if he would have just said that he identified as a black male, he might have gotten $2 million or $20 million. I don't know. What did George Floyd's family get? $27 million? Former LEO says, how about that nurse that refused to treat an unvaccinated cold? I don't know if I saw that story. Is that a real story? Christiana says, the argument is that even in our lifetimes, white men have had preferential treatment in preparing themselves, even in childhood, for the workforce for a million different societal reasons. That has some truth to it. So we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we can't discriminate against anyone either. So people have to think outside the box to solve the problem. These people obviously didn't. I think it's a good comment there, Christiana. Right? I think you can, I don't disagree with that, right? Our society is structured for a lot of different things that are sort of maybe not as useful anymore, right? Like there was, I forget who I was listening to, but somebody said that we're living in a society built for the past. In many ways, right? And you think about this, right? Like we still have a lot of houses that have landlines in them. Those were very useful in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, but not anymore. But we're still living in that world. We're still living in a world where we have roads and freeways and sidewalks and cities that are not really built right now. Like if you could like in a video game, hit start over and keep all the people and resources and you had an hour to build a new city, you probably wouldn't build it the same way that a lot of these cities are currently laid out and built, and how the sewage and the water mains, it's all layered on top of other things. And so you're going to have a lot of carryover that's going to show up as inequities throughout society. There's no question about that. I'm not arguing about that. Here, what we're talking about is social engineering of corporations based on these socially constructed dividing lines, like race and gender and all of this stuff in a company that's based on competence and providing healthcare. It's weird. Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, if you want to, live in I don't know. We could spiral off on that, but good comment there, Christiana. Be Brave says, my firm is proud that they've reached 30% female employees. Just saying. I mean, okay, I guess if that's something to be proud about, I guess. Look, if they're competent and they add value to the firm and they do a great job, I don't care what gender they are. You have 50, 10%, 5, 100%. I don't care. I'm not Gas says, that was a spoiler on the Game of Thrones. Mike, that's inappropriate. Rob, have you ever been discriminated against as a white male? Yeah, I can name a couple instances, and I'm not joking. Kamala says, will Joe sue me if they replace him with me? How much is the presidency worth? That's from Kamala. A couple more says, Game of Thrones last season, because it was so bad, somebody should sue them for $10 million. I agree, they should. What a disaster. John Delar said, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. White men need to rise up and start suing everyone. He's singing the song of success there since the lawsuit came out victoriously. Jay He says, it's a good thing he won the case. Otherwise, he might have to take up a new career like painting like Hunter Biden does. Those were great questions and comments over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we record this show live. We want you to come and join us the next time that we do. Come check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right, and we've got one final segment on the show today, and we've got Alec Baldwin's in the house. Now, a lot of clips on this because it's a big press conference, but we learned some new things today. So let's get into it now. Alec Baldwin, the investigation is still ongoing surrounding the Rust shooting. We have some new players who came onto our board. As we like to do here, we've got to check in and make sure we know who is doing what. So, of course, at the top, we have Alec Baldwin, the shooter, and we're going to hear from our two new additions to our board, Aiden Mendoza. He's the sheriff you see down here. We're also going to hear from Mary Carmack Outways. She is the prosecutor and the district attorney. Talked about her yesterday, learned a little bit more about her. She said specifically today that criminal charges against any of these other people, excluding, of course, the victims. This is Halna Hutchins and Joel Souza. But for these three individuals, which includes Alec Baldwin, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the armorer, and Dave Halls, there may be criminal charges coming. And in fact, nothing is off the table, not even for Alec Baldwin. And so we've got a big press conference today that took place. It was about 20 minutes, some interesting clips. We're going to go through them in turn. I want to start off by introducing us to the sheriff of Santa Fe County. This is Aiden Mendoza, and he kind of gave us just a brief introduction today about what we've already heard and learned about. But let's see how he is framing this for us today. This is the first press conference where we've heard from him and the prosecution. And a little bit of framing here. Most of the conversation today was about the investigation is ongoing. We've got a lot to dig into. It's going to take a lot of time. Sheriff's office sent a bunch of this stuff over to the FBI, and they're going to be doing their due diligence. But we did learn some interesting stuff about the ammunition, about the bullets that were on the scene at Rust, as well as the recovered bullet that came out of Joel Souza's shoulder. So we're going to start off here. Here is the sheriff telling us a little bit about the introduction about how this all unfolded back on that fateful day. Here he is.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. I'm Sheriff Adan Mendoza. First and foremost, I'd like to offer our condolences to the Hutchins family, a speedy recovery to Mr. Souza, and our concern for the safety of all the men and women in the film industry. On Thursday, October 21st, 2001, at 1:48 p.m., we were dispatched to Bonanza Creek Ranch in reference to a 911 call advising that two people had been shot on a movie set. The first deputy arrived at 2:00 p.m. and EMS arrived at 2:01 p.m. It was later determined that Helena Hutchins, the director of cinematography, and Joel Souza, the director, had been shot while rehearsing a scene on the movie Rust. During the initial investigation, it was determined that actor-producer Alec Baldwin was the person that fired the weapon. We identified two other people that handled and/or inspected the loaded firearm prior to Baldwin firing the weapon. These two individuals are armorer Hannah Reed Gutierrez and assistant director David Halls. All three individuals have been cooperative in the investigation and have provided statements.
Okay, so some interesting details that are confirmed there for us. Most of this we already knew. We've been covering this most days that we've had updates to cover, but we now know, right, it is those three people, the same people that we just circled here. They are now sort of the official suspects, right, or the official people who might be suspect to or subject to criminal charges. Dave Halls, the assistant director, we know previously, having talked about him, that there was allegations that he had screwed up some firearm stuff on other shows, on other scenes. Hannah Gutierrez Reed, of course, is 24 years old. Father is an armorer, somebody with a lot of background. But this is it, right? These are the three people who were sort of in the purview. We also are going to hear that they were interviewing a lot of other people. We're going to hear that in the next clip. But a couple other things to point out here, right? Everybody, according to the sheriff, is being very cooperative. They're all, it sounds like, working with the sheriff's department, sitting for interviews, responding to requests. And so they are all communicating about this. And, as a defense attorney, that makes me concerned, right? Unless they've got defense attorneys who are helping them with this process, and the sheriff is now saying, well, they're communicating with us through their attorneys, well, then that's a different story. But, the fact that they're responding and being interfacing and all of that. But my point here is, if Hannah Gutierrez Reed is being interviewed by the police without a lawyer, or Dave Halls is without a lawyer, right? Regardless of what you think happened here, or whether they should or should not be prosecuted, as a defense attorney, not a good idea, right? You want to make sure that even if you're somebody who didn't do anything wrong, that by being overly, useful and helpful and cooperative with the police, that you don't bury yourself under all of the fingers pointing your direction. So that was something I noted right away, right? And I don't know what the extent of that is, because we really don't know if they're, as we're going to hear, they really haven't initiated a criminal investigation, but they don't have to during the underlying, preliminary investigation. That's where the criminal charges start. You start with a preliminary review. Oh, this all got screwed up. We're going to review that against the statutes. Is there probable cause here based upon our initial findings to, warrant criminal charges? That's a separate determination. You sort of gather the facts, then you do the analysis after the fact. And so we now know it's these three people, the same three people that we've already long suspected were going to be in the crosshairs. And so next we have a clip from the sheriff who details a little bit more about the scene, right? And yesterday and the day before, we talked a lot about the bullets, the type of ammunition that may have been used in the gun, specifically distinguishing between, an actual bullet, a dummy round that looks like a real bullet but doesn't have any powder inside the bullet, and then we have a blank, right, that has the actual projectile, the head, the tip of the bullet removed and is crimped near the top so that it actually causes an explosion, but it doesn't send a projectile outside of the barrel of the gun. We also learned yesterday that there were, apparently actors or other people from the set who were plinking, running around, the surrounding area, shooting guns, multiple guns, as we're going to hear, with what sounds like live ammo, right? Because you can't plink something, you can't shoot a beer can and have it plink when the bullet hits it with a dummy bullet or with a blank. So they were using live rounds, going around the Rust set, shooting all over the place, and something happened where the actual ammunition ended up in the loaded gun and killed a woman and injured somebody else. So they got a bunch of search warrants. We looked through the warrants. We had News Now Wyoming who sent that over to us, and we covered it verbatim. We went through the entire search warrant. Here is what they found after executing that warrant. This is the sheriff of Santa Fe County.
During this process, we determined that there were a limited amount of movie set staff present in the area where the actual incident took place, although there were approximately 100 people on set. Through the execution of search warrants, we have collected about 600 items of evidence.
Whoa.
These include, but are not limited to, 3 firearms, approximately 500 rounds of ammunition, and several pieces of clothing and accessories.
100 people, 600 items of evidence, 3 firearms, 500 rounds of ammo, clothing, and accessories. That's a lot, right? That's a lot of information. That's a lot of rounds of ammo. And what's the standard on that, right? This is stuff that we're going to be arguing about, policies and procedures, and about who's responsible for what, who actually loaded it, who's responsible for checking it. Does any of that liability, that criminal liability, extend up to Alec Baldwin? We don't know. But we know that there's a lot of different stuff that's floating around here. 3 different firearms, 500 rounds of ammo. Sheriff continues, he tells us more about this gun, and they detail, this is some interesting data, they detail for us that there was an actual lead projectile, came out of Mr. Souza's shoulder, in fact, and they're doing some additional testing on it. You'll also hear him use the word the, right? We got the live round out, right? 1 bullet is what he's saying. Then he's saying there were additional other live rounds on the set, which to me, you might disagree, which to me sounds like, right, other live ammunition, not other expended live rounds that came out of the gun. So it's sort of 1 bullet that went through 2 people, killing Helena Hutchins and then ending up in Souza's shoulder, which is where they actually extracted the bullet, and they were able to identify the same shell casing that came from the bullet, and they're going to be sending this over for more testing. Here is the sheriff.
We believe that we have in our possession the firearm that was fired by Mr. Baldwin. This is the firearm we believe discharged the bullet. We also believe that we have the spent shell casing from the bullet that was fired from the gun. The actual lead projectile that was fired has been recovered from the shoulder of Mr. Souza. The projectile was recovered by medical personnel where he was being treated and turned over to the sheriff's office as evidence. We regard this specific spent casing and recovered projectile to be the live round that was fired from the revolver by Mr. Baldwin. We have recovered what we believe to be possible additional live rounds on set. All the previous mentioned items, along with other items of evidence, will be submitted to the FBI Crime Lab in Quantico, Virginia, for analysis.
Okay, so A lot of stuff going on there, right? Spent shell casing, lead projectile. Not sure that any of this stuff is really going to give us new insight into, who done it, in other words, or who to blame, or who's going to be responsible for this, or where the inquiry leads. But we do get some information about it, right? We got a shell casing, we've got a lead projectile, so we know it sounds like it was a live round. So any of the other concepts, like there was, some people were saying that maybe it was a blank that had something lodged in the barrel. Right, so even though it didn't have the head of an actual real bullet, because it didn't have the projectile at the tip, it was just sort of a blank with the explosive in it. If there was something in the barrel, the blank might still treat that object in the barrel as a projectile. It could have been something else that was sort of a freak accident. Doesn't sound like that, right? Sounds like it was just a real bullet now that went through Helena and ended up in Sousa. We've got one more quick clip of the sheriff. He's talking about criminal charges, and then I think we're going to turn it over to the district attorney, who is also, kind of contemplating what to do with this case, and has indicated as such that everything is on the table. Here's the sheriff talking about probable cause.
The investigation will continue, and if the sheriff's office determines during our investigation a crime has occurred and probable cause exists, an arrest or arrests will be made and charges will be filed. Otherwise, we will complete our investigation and forward the full investigation and evidence to the district attorney for review.
Okay, so, right, standard language that you're going to hear from a sheriff. We're going to do our investigation. If we believe there's a crime that's been committed, we're going to make the arrest. Otherwise, if we don't really know on this thing, we're going to turn it over to the county attorney, the district attorney in this case, and she is going to make a charging decision at that point. So he turns it over to her. Her name is Mary, and she has a hyphenated last name. I can't remember what it is, but she comes out. Here she is. She's giving us some information about the prosecutorial perspective, right? She is now the charging agency. So police are sort of the investigatory agency, kind of gathering the witnesses, the information, but they're not going to be able to really, do a good job deciding whether there was enough probable cause, let's say maybe for multiple avenues of criminal liability, from Hannah Reed to David Halls to Alec Baldwin. That's a complicated legal analysis that needs to take place before we can come up with a significant charging answer there. And so all of this is being passed over to the prosecuting agency, which is going to receive everything that the police do, that they get from the FBI, assemble it, and then make a charging decision. And she is not in any hurry, as you're going to hear. They're going to be waiting some time before we hear any conclusions on this.
I speak to the prosecutorial perspective here, and I must emphasize that a complete and thorough investigation is critical to DA review. We take the corroborated facts and evidence and connect it to New Mexico law, and we are not at that juncture yet. If the facts and evidence and law support charges, then I will initiate prosecution at that time. I am a prosecutor that was elected in part because I do not make rash decisions, and I do not rush to judgment. I rely on facts supported by evidence, cooperative and credible witnesses, and I cannot stress the importance of allowing the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office to continue with their quality investigation that is both serious and complex.
All right, so very serious, very complex. Give them space to do their work. It's going to take a long time. And I really, I said this yesterday on the show, I don't think that we're going to get, many answers here anytime soon, because there's a lot that's going to go into it. And again, a lot of eyeballs on this thing and a lot of political pressure. No question about that. So another question went back over to the sheriff. Remember those 500 rounds that we talked about? Were those all live rounds, or what was this? Was this a gun show? What's happening here? Right? Not that that's a lot of rounds, but this is what he had to say about this. He tells us the makeup of those 500 rounds.
No, I said there was a total of 500 rounds of ammunition. That is a mix of blanks, dummy rounds, and what we are suspecting, live rounds.
Sure. The bullet was found in the director's shoulder that was recovered at the hospital.
Okay, so he says that 500 round makeup was a number of different things: live ammo, dummy rounds, and blanks. And then this was the big takeaway of the hearing. This is the district attorney coming out, because everybody wants to know, are you going to charge Alec Baldwin? He actually pulled the trigger, right? He was sort of the producer. He's kind of the head honcho. Everybody knows who he is. Is he going to get charged with a crime here? He shot and killed a woman, right? Regardless of what you think about the liability on his behalf. They want to know, yes or no. Are you charging him so we can get on with this thing, yes or no? And she is saying, not so sure yet. But all options are on the table. Here she is.
All options are on the table at this point. I'm not commenting on charges, whether they will be filed or not, or on whom. So the answer is we cannot answer that question yet until we complete a more thorough investigation.
There is the potential for Alec Baldwin himself to face charges because you have not ruled them out.
No one has been ruled out at this point.
Is Alec Baldwin considered a person of interest right now?
Yeah.
No, that's you.
He's obviously the person that fired the weapon. So we're going to continue interviewing and getting the facts of his statements and the evidence and the case and possible witnesses or anybody that has any information. So right now he is an active part of this investigation that I can't confirm.
Is he likely to be
Yeah. So yeah. Right. Yes. He is a person of interest. Yes. He had the gun in his hand and he shot her. So yes, you can't just say, oh, he's Alec Baldwin. He's famous. I love that movie that he was in and that show that time. No. No, Alec Baldwin's fine. No, we're not even looking at him. It's that damn armorer who did it. Okay, those were the clips from the press conference today. Let's see what your thoughts are on the Alec Baldwin situation. See if we've got any thoughts coming in over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And as we were going through those clips, I want to give a special shout out to my friend over at Rumble, Free Appalachian in the house. Free Appalachian is enjoying a $30 cigar right now, which means that's a very nice cigar. But unfortunately, this is not a $30 cigar show. Apologize for that, Free Appalachian. Sorry you had to crack one of those open. If I could do something special for you, I would. But, now we're getting into interesting territory there. So, all right, our first question here on the Alec Baldwin segment is from Sergeant Bob. Says, oh no, Mr. Rob. They are involving the FBI. When I was an officer in Oregon, we did it through the state crime lab. Same for when I worked in Illinois. Perhaps Santa Fe County, New Mexico do not have access to the state crime lab. Yes, a lot of evidence, but it is all like a big science project. So Sergeant Bob, a little bit skeptical that this was being sent over to the FBI because we all know the FBI, how good they are. I'm not so sure what they're going to be able to do with this. They're probably going to have to take some of the staff, probably some people from the 8th floor who are working on the Where's Waldo game campaign that they're focused on, and bring them over there to do some crime lab analysis. But does Alec Baldwin have any compadres over there who might, tinker around with anything? I don't know. I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. All right, we have another one from Thunder7 says, good clips, more things that make Baldwin look more and more guilty. Why would he be firing a gun during a rehearsal? Second, the movie script of Rust is all about an accidental shooting. Here's a TikTok video Baldwin posted a few days. He talks about his admiration for Fauci, how we're at war with the unvaccinated, and how we have to make sacrifices. He compared it to World War XI. Seems very unhinged. Please watch it later, Rob. I will do that. I think I might have seen this, actually, now that you mention it. Yeah, so that's over on BitChute. I'll watch that later. Yeah, that's a interesting Thunder7. I think I did see that. I think somebody posted that on Twitter. The phone's kind of up here. You kind of look at him like this, and he doesn't look really great, which is why I wanted to know if they did a blood draw. Jay, he says, can the owners of Bonanza Creek Ranch be sued by the husband of Hutchins for any wrongdoing? Any liability here, or is this all covered under the insurance underwriters of the movie? I don't know, Jay Heath. They probably, contracted a lot of that out away. Now, some things you can't sort of, contract out of liability. If it was their ranch and the house fell down on everybody, right, they might be liable for that unless, insurance covered that. But this was sort of, I think, kept within the confines of the production. And so I'm not sure that they'd be able to escape. In other words, right, Helena Hutchins is the plaintiff. She's bringing the lawsuit. How did what the owners of the ranch do contribute to her death other than just having the property? I'm not sure that they'd be able to escape sort of the bubble of the production company and go after the assets of anybody outside of that. But I don't practice in that particular space. I'm sure. Let me clarify that. I know attorneys that their job is just to go find different ways to sue people. So that just because it doesn't make sense in terms of justice to me, it also doesn't mean that it's off the table, right? Nobody is happy to be a part of this thing right now. Nobody. We have an old cat lady, not a grouch today. Well, that's good news. Says, is it possible to get a fingerprint off of a shell casing? Yeah, you can, to my knowledge, right? I've never actually seen that done or had it come up off in a case. Like, we know it was your client because we got a fingerprint on the shell casing. But, you know, you've sort of seen it, right? And I would presume that you can in certain scenarios because remember, right, a bullet, the shell casing is not doing much, especially in a revolver. It just kind of sits there, right? So if you mash your fingerprint on the side of it and you shove it in there and you fire the bullet, the only thing that really moves in there is the projectile coming out the other end. The shell casing is just going to be right there. And so if you just pulled it out and set it down, I'd suspect you could probably pull something off of there if I had to guess. But, who knows there, right? There was a lot of pandemonium. It might have hit the floor. It might have been, stepped on. Who knows if they're going to be able to identify what that is. And even if it comes back with a fingerprint, right, somebody else loaded it. Let's say, for example, that Hannah, the armorer, loaded it up, but then handed it to David Halls, and David Halls checks it, says, nope, that's looking good to me. Here you go, Alec. Who's responsible for that? Could Halls be? I don't know. Sergeant Bob says, never, never, ever should live rounds be anywhere near that set. I think that's the general rule. That would be the default rule, right? Like there's no live anything there because you're using guns that are being pointed at people. I agree. Chairman of the board says, so interesting to see the prominent microphone at the press conference is from Entertainment Tonight. Such a different situation. I would have loved to be a reporter at the presser so I could raise my hand and ask, any word on when Alec Baldwin will resume shooting? We saw that one. I think I saw that at first from Malice or somebody like that. It's a great line. When is Baldwin going to be out there and resume shooting? That's almost like that Tom Cotton statement there, Chairman. It just hurts. Like it's such a zinger. It hurts a little bit, which is why I love it. Thank you. We have Speech Unleashed says, can they really charge multiple people for the same incident? Or do you think they'll just lay it on one person? In this case, I think it's hard to say, but yeah, they can charge multiple people for the same incident all the time. Yeah. I mean, happens. The analogy we use, Speech, is sort of a felony murder case where there are multiple people involved in some underlying offense that results in somebody being killed. They charge everybody involved. The analogy is the bank robbery analogy. The getaway driver who never goes into the bank and kills anybody, but somebody dies, he's charged with murder. Why? A felony was being committed, and he was part of the same underlying group of acts. So he also gets charged with murder. It's like, there are multiple ways where sort of several different activities, maybe independently by themselves, won't result in a criminal activity. But if you layer them on top of one another in a certain way, they all contribute to the ultimate criminality. And then the law has to figure out who to charge and how to charge it. This is why it's going to be a complicated decision for the prosecutors. And we just don't know, right? They're going to have to go through it. Geegum said, which is why I said that they're going to take time to dig into this. It's not inappropriate. Geegum says, whether or not there is any accountability to this tragedy, if they have any trace of a moral compass, Alec Baldwin, David Halls, Hannah Reid should make it their mission in life to take care of Helena's children, make sure they're okay. Too young to lose a mama, sad. Thanks, Rob. You pronounced my name right. Sweet. Glad I got that. Sometimes I can remember things. We have a former LEO says, FYI, those types of period piece revolvers are known as single action. The hammer needs to be cocked prior to the trigger being able to fire the round. When the revolver is fired, the hammer must be manually cocked, which rotates the cylinder, bringing another round under the hammer and aligned with the barrel, then it is able to be fired. The hammer must be in a cocked position to fire. Double action revolvers can be fired just by squeezing the trigger. Okay, that's good information. I think I knew that, but I wouldn't be able to articulate it like that. So what he's saying, right, in a revolver, you've got the cylinders in the revolving cylinder there. And in a double action, if you pull the trigger, it will cock the hammer, rotate the cylinder, and send the hammer back in there, firing the gun. Versus a single action, which you actually have to cock it, and that will rotate the revolver, bringing in a new unspent round. Then you press the trigger, the hammer is fired, hits the bullet, launches the projectile. Good to know. Now, I think he was also, remember, cross-drawing. So he was doing one of these, cross-drawing and then pointing at the camera. And so if it's single action and it was already cocked and he pulls it and something goes wrong in there, maybe it goes off in that mechanism, in that movement. Versus if it's a double action, then he's pulling it out. He's going to have a harder trigger pull, right? And the trigger pull is much different, I think, between those two different, when you distinguish between those two. When it's already cocked single action, it's more like a hair trigger. I've actually shot those guns, right? So it just pop, it's much loose, where if you have a double action, you've got to have enough pressure on the pull to actually rotate the cylinder, cock the hammer back, and then send it forward. So interesting, yeah. Trying to recreate that motion that Baldwin was doing. B. Brave says, based sheriff, liberal prosecutor, Baldwin won't be charged. It's a good prediction. Nancy Pelosi's fun bag says, Rob, would you grab mine like a game of cornhole? Just throw it right there. Ugh, Nancy Pelosi. Speech Unleashed says, maybe Biden will pull a few strings for Alec at the FBI if he agrees to anonymously buy one of Hunter's paintings. Sorry, couldn't resist. That's not far out from reality here. Hunter Biden just sold like a $500,000 painting. Can you believe that crap? Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, not sure if you caught what the DA said, but she did give a hint that someone may have changed their name to no one. She did say that no one has been ruled out as a suspect. That's true. Yeah, Mr. No One. He's a very, very popular person in the criminal world. Who stole that candy bar? No one did. I don't know who did that. Wasn't me. Former LEO says, we had our own crime lab, and the worst thing that could happen was having the FBI involved in any of our investigations. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help is a lie. That's from former LEO. Nobody likes the feds. Nobody does. You know those cop shows where the feds show up like, this is our investigation now. And the cop's like, the hell it is. Get out of my jurisdiction. It's true, as we can see. Monster One says, Rob, don't be a landline bigot. A lot of people live in rural areas with little to no cell service, couldn't survive without one. Not everyone lives in cities. That's true. That's true. Just add it to the list. Bigot, xenophobe, racist, Nazi. Landline, sophisticated. What do they say? Oh, yeah. All right. It's true, Monster One. I don't know. You're right. I'm just a Scottsdale City boy. Sergeant Bob says, prints can be recovered from casings, but just in case someone touched it does not mean a fingerprint of value is found. Yeah, it's a good one. So Sergeant Bob got law enforcement now chiming in, which is good because I don't know. I don't know some of the answers to these questions. And this is the power of being able to do this segment live. Literally, right? Like we could do this another way. I could just record the segment and not take any questions. That would be very boring, but we can sort of learn in real time on the fly. This is what's so powerful about this. I'm so grateful to the community. Let's see. ACLU is here. Said, oh, here we go. Here's a list of all my problems. Robert Gruller, he's a right-wing, sexist, white supremacist organization. Every time I turn it on, all I see is some white guy ranting about random stuff in English, which, by the way, is a white supremacist language. How about some diversity for a change? Well, I could be like Justin Trudeau or the governor out of Virginia and put on blackface in my hot tub with my bikini eating a bunch of food. What was the other one that I'm Not Gas was talking about? People get on live streams and just eat a bunch of food. ACLU is bringing it to me today. Alec is here. He says, now that I'm a JB spokesman on gun safety, don't pull the trigger. Let me do it. Old Cat Lady says, you don't always expel the shell casing either. Right, yeah, you don't, right? In a revolver, it could just stay right in there, presumably. But I think we heard that maybe Hannah Reed may have actually pulled it out. Monster One says, sometimes the accomplices get more time than the shooter. I've seen cases where the shooter gets 20 years and the driver gets life. Interesting. Yeah, anybody involved in the underlying, they call it a common scheme or plan, can be subject to extended liability. Jay He says, I really hope Alec Baldwin learns to humble himself as a result of this accident, can learn to check his ego at the door. In the long run, this might actually result in him actually becoming a better human being. And you know what, Jay Heath? I absolutely agree with you and endorse that idea, right? People, look, tragedies happen in people's lives all the time. right? People are humbled by life. People can be at the top of the game. I've seen it personally. I've felt it personally. When you sort of think that you've got everything in order, on top of the world, life will humble you. And I think it's important that we all have empathy for people who get humbled, because we could be next, right? You could wake up one day, boom, you get hit by a bus. Now you're, in a wheelchair. And so we all just have to remember that as we're going through these conversations, yes, it's okay to, indulge in a little bit of schadenfreude every now and then. Yes, sometimes, true happiness is seeing your neighbor fall off the roof. I get that. I get those instincts. I get that politics is a blood sport. I get that it's fun to come in here and dunk on people. But at the end of the day, right, we have a dead woman. We have a man's life who's ruined, many other people's lives who are ruined. And it's a tragedy through and through. And so when you are in a situation like this where there's just nothing but tragedy, you are hopeful that on the other end, somebody learns something and comes out a little bit better than they went into it. Otherwise, it's just a tragedy, right? There's nothing good that comes out of it. And so, we want to be empathetic, and we want to make sure that we can be a part of a productive conversation in a small way. That's what we're trying to do here. John Halgren says, if he wanted the action to seem smooth, he very well could have had the hammer back. I really doubt we will ever know the truth. Yeah, so he could have been just, on a hair trigger, just boom, pops it off, and maybe it wasn't the right time to go off. Maybe that's where the negligence was. Jeremy says, Rob, I believe the firm would be a telephobe. That is the right, I didn't know what it was. A telephobe, yeah. Which is just the worst. Fired At says, you say your show isn't a $30 cigar show. How about a $30 bottle of wine? I enjoy listening to you and all the comments from your fans. I still can't get past the fact that Alec had control of the weapon. Blame game is frustrating in society as a whole. That's from Fired At 58. $30 bottle of wine. Yeah, sounds like a good bottle. Yeah, he did have control of the weapon, right? And I think that's where a lot of people are falling on this issue. He had it. It was a gun. When you're 8 years old and you go shooting, they teach you always check the gun, right? The instructor gives it to you. Your uncle gives it to you. Look at it. Is the safety off? Yeah, it is. Okay. Point it at the thing. Don't point. Okay. All right. It's a deadly weapon. It's a prop. It's a movie scene, but it is a deadly weapon. And I don't know how this works on set. Yesterday, Eat on Test told us that maybe, in fact, the actor, the person at the very end, right, he's focused on something else. Somebody else needs to make sure that everything is in order because he's acting. He's right in the middle of the scene. He doesn't have time to check all that stuff. But we don't know. And again, if he's cross shooting, how much time elapsed between the time David Halls said cold gun, gave it to Baldwin, and he did the cross training rehearsal shoot? A lot of questions, right? This whole thing probably happened within a matter of seconds, and fortunately, it wasn't being recorded. Bowdlerize me, says Rob, you can holster this idea for later. But do you think the DA should take aim through everyone to Alec? Or will she make a quick draw on the celebrity card and unload the charges on someone else? Sounds like she'll take a deep breath before pulling the trigger. Think she's got a shot at emptying the clip of New Mexico laws on anyone? Keep up the good work. Another shooting pun. Look, Bowdlerize me. I don't know how you do it. That's pretty damn impressive. It's beautiful. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this shell's going to crack. How about that? We'll leave it there. That's all I've got for you. I'm Not Gas says, the crows at Quantico ring the bell at the Zenith. Zulu will know what to do with this information. All right, so we've got communication from locals to our unlisted YouTube chat. Talking in code. We're all part of the same community, but there's just two chats going on. Old Cat Lady says, love your sense of humor. Laughter is the best medicine in these times. Thanks, Old Cat Lady. What else can you do? I mean, honestly, other than just poke some fun at some of this stuff and go through the news. And learn, right? We're learning and having good conversations. Former LEO says, just wait until they lift an unknown print from the cartridge case. Yeah, what if there's a fourth man on the grassy knoll? What could happen then? Alex says, Chairman, I resent your question about me resuming shooting. I feel like that is a loaded question, although I'm not really sure. The shooting puns. Former LEO says, or he palmed it with his hand to cock it, finger on the trigger, depress the gun finger on trigger and depressed, the gun will fire when the hammer is cocked because it won't catch the trigger with the trigger depressed. So what he's saying here is that the trigger is already depressed. So as soon as the hammer is cocked, and there's nothing to catch it, so it will just fire back, hit the primer, and trigger the bullet. And our last one from Sergeant Bob says, somebody please call the pun police. We absolutely need a full-time pun and food condiment law enforcement team over here. Maybe I should send Merrick Garland a letter and then he can write a new memo. Just kidding. I love the puns and I love tomatoes and pickles and all of them. So that's all great stuff from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you for all of your support over there. A lot of great questions and conversation that took place on the show today. So we hope you join us over at our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we're welcoming some amazing new people who joined up. We have Roy Bott who signed up. Welcome, Roy Bott. We've got Ronnie Cole who joined in the house. Ronnie Cole, I've seen a lot on YouTube, finally made the jump over to locals. Welcome, Ronnie Cole. Joined up for the year also. We've got French Toast who signed up. The AI guy. I happen to love French Toast. I haven't had that in a long time. The AI guy, very cool. He's here. Martini Junkie, welcome. We have Just Cows, who I think is a welcome back again. Welcome, Just. A Cold Painter. We have Damn Girl. We have Michael N. And we have over here, oh, those are some of the same names. Oh, yeah, we just copied those. Previously, we had Bill Givens, our guy, So Floor Red. We have Maxim 15T, Sir Darren, Fired at 58, as well as V-Dubs, Hanny, all in the house. And if you want to join us over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, $5 a month, $50 a year. We're doing more locals exclusive stuff. I think every day this week we've had a morning, so just a quick chat. You know, sometimes in between meetings, I'm going to be behind the camera anyways. And so I just want to stop in and say good morning. Not talking about anything too meaningful other than just poking around the news. On Tuesday, my brother Joey was in, and so everybody got to meet him. But we have a lot of fun stuff coming up. In particular, Saturday, November 6th from 7 to 8 p.m. over in our community, we have a monthly locals meetup, and we hop on via Zoom. It's like 30 to 40 people. It lasts about an hour. They've been going about 2 hours, but it's just kind of a time to have a conversation, right? I talk about it all the time, that we're building a community and we're getting to know each other and we're providing support. And we're just kind of, talking through the issues. And so come and join us. It's on Zoom. You can bring your cameras, leave them on, turn them off, use a real name, use a fake name. Doesn't matter to me. Just come and hang out. Stay for 5 minutes, stay for 2 hours. It's all up to you. Saturday, November 6th, for supporters over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I want to thank everybody for being a part of the show. Shout out to my friends over on Rumble. We've got Free Appalachian in the house. A lot of good comments over there. I've been checking in on them throughout the day. Over on our YouTube unlisted Secret Cabal chat, shout outs to Zulu. We've got Just Cows over there. We've got Sniper Jared, and we've got other people chatting away. And then, of course, my friends on locals. Final shout-outs to I'm Not Gas, Jeremy Matrita. We have Ronnie Cole over there. Deadmau5 is in the house. Mustang Jeff, Ronnie Cole, see him again there. And many others. Bespec, Ty Livin. Good to see you, Ty Livin. John Halgren, Not Josh. Kareem165, Fill in Flyover. All chatting away. Shout-outs to Nadarb and Speech Unleashed. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. Quick reminder that we are broadcasting, we're recording live at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Locals. The live stream is carried on Rumble and on Twitch and our friends over on Twitter and elsewhere. And then the show premieres right after that on YouTube. Now, sometimes I can get it done quickly. Sometimes the show runs a little bit long like today. And so the premieres come out as soon as I can get them up, but they've been a little bit later, like 8 o'clock Eastern. 8 o'clock Arizona time, sometimes before they go live, which means they're pretty late. So just bear that in mind. Sometimes they're going to be late. Yesterday it was late. I had a problem. I had to double upload a video because there was a processing error, and so it didn't actually publish until 11 p.m., which is just too late, and I apologize for that. But I get off the show, I edit it, I upload it. Sometimes YouTube processes it quickly, sometimes not. So probably going to go live on average, about 8 p.m. Arizona time, so late on the East Coast. But hopefully you catch it bright and early, first thing in the morning when you get to it. And if you do want to join us live, We record at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 7 p.m. Eastern, over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I hope you do consider joining us. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. So I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Everybody be well, sleep very well. Have a great evening. Bye-bye, my friends.